Ladies and gentlemen, there are moments in life when your soul whispers a warning before your ears hear a word or your heart feels the sting. That whisper, that gentle uneases your spirit, trying to protect you from what your eyes have not yet seen. Toxic people are not always loud, and they don't always look harmful. Sometimes they come wrapped in the softest voices and the warmest smiles, but what they carry inside can corrode your peace, distort your self-worth, and dim the light in your life. To walk through life with grace and strength, you must learn not only to heal, but also to see the signs, to recognize the patterns, to honor your energy. Not everyone who walks with you is meant to stay, and not everyone who says, "I love you," truly understands what love means. Today, I want to share with you 5 powerful strategies that will unlock the door of awareness, courage, and clarity. Because when you learn how to identify toxic people, you also learn how to protect your purpose. They drain your energy, not fuel it. There is a unique kind of fatigue that doesn't come from work or lack of sleep. It comes from being around someone who constantly takes more than they give. It's the kind of exhaustion that seeps into your spirit, not just your body. You walk away from a conversation not feeling heard, but feeling hollow. That's not connection, that's depletion. These are the people who need you most when it's inconvenient for you. They reach out not to check on your well-being, but to offload their emotional baggage. They treat you like a sponge there to soak up their pain, but never to hold your own. And every time you try to share your burden, they pivot the conversation back to themselves. It becomes a pattern, a silent, unspoken agreement that your needs are secondary, that their crisis matters more than your peace. And you start to shrink yourself so they can take up more space. You start to smile when you're tired, nod when you're confused, and show up even when your heart is breaking. This kind of dynamic is dangerous because it's disguised as loyalty. You tell yourself you're being a good friend, a supportive partner, a caring sibling, but what you're really doing is abandoning yourself in the name of someone else's comfort. That's not love, that's sacrifice without reciprocity. You may start to notice how little space you occupy in conversations, how quickly your celebrations are brushed aside, how often your dreams are met with silence. It's subtle at first, but over time it becomes a habitone where you stop sharing altogether. It's a strange loneliness, being surrounded by people who are always talking but never listening. And your soul begins to ache not from isolation, but from being unseen. The deepest wound is not from being alone. It's from being invisible in the presence of someone who claims to care. Energy doesn't lie. If someone consistently leaves you feeling drained, confused, or emotionally heavy, believe that. Your body knows before your mind does. Your spirit recognizes toxicity before your logic makes excuses. You don't need to explain why you feel uncomfortable around someone. You don't owe anyone a justification for wanting peace. The moment you start to question if you're too sensitive, too dramatic, too needy, pause. You're not too much, you're just not being met with enough care. There are people in this world who will fill your cup just by being present. Their words feel like light. Their silence feels safe. Their energy, a soft landing place after a hard day. That's the kind of connection you deserve. Not one that drains you, but one that breathes life into your tired heart. When you start to notice who gives and who only takes, clarity comes. And with that clarity comes courage. The courage to walk away from what drains you, even if it once felt familiar. Even if you once called it home. You must understand that your energy is a currency. And some people will bankrupt you emotionally if you're not careful. They will keep withdrawing and never deposit anything in return. Not kindness, not empathy, not time, not love. You cannot heal in the same place that is making you sick. And you cannot grow in soil that keeps pulling at your roots. Sometimes, choosing yourself means disappointing those who only valued you when you were available for their chaos. Protecting your energy is not selfish. It is survival. It is strength. It is self-respect. And it is a commitment to living a life that feels like peace, not punishment. When you start to honor your own needs, the right people will honor them too. You won't have to beg for presents. You won't have to plead for attention. Love, real love, will feel effortless in its ability to nourish, not drain. And in that nourishment, you will bloom. They manipulate with guilt and fear. Guilt is a powerful weapon in the hands of someone who knows how to use your empathy against you. It disguises itself as concern, dresses itself in phrases like, I'm only saying this because I care, and hides behind the mask of love. But love does not guilt trip. Love does not intimidate. Love does not demand obedience through fear. There are people who will never raise their voice, but their silence will punish you. They won't shout, but their disapproval will cripple your confidence. They will not force you with words, but their absence will pressure you into submission. That is manipulation in its most dangerous form, the kind you can't always see but always feel. You may find yourself saying yes when every part of you wants to say no. You may agree to things you don't have the capacity for just to avoid the coldness that follows your resistance. This is not compromise. This is compliance under emotional pressure. They remind you of all they've done for you. They recall the favors, the sacrifices, the times they were there only to use it as leverage, not love. They don't bring up the past to build connection. They bring it up to create debt. And you begin to feel like you owe them something for simply being in your life. It is a slow erosion of self, a quiet crumbling of your own boundaries. You stop asserting your needs because doing so leads to arguments or silence. You begin to tiptoe around them, not because you fear their wrath, but because you fear their withdrawal. Their absence becomes a punishment. That's when you realize this isn't love. It's a transaction disguised as devotion. And your worth is being measured not by who you are, but by how well you obey. That is not a safe place to build a life. That is not where freedom lives. True love expands you. It does not restrict you. It welcomes your voice. It celebrates your boundaries. It does not silence you with guilt or shame you into decisions. If you feel trapped under the weight of obligation, that is a red flag your soul cannot ignore. You were not created to live in fear of someone's moods. You were not meant to feel small in order to be loved. Love should not require you to betray yourself in order to keep someone else happy. The moment you start to hide parts of yourself to keep someone else close, that is the moment you begin to lose yourself. It takes courage to name manipulation for what it is, especially when it's wrapped in affection. But clarity is an act of power. And once you recognize the pattern, you start to reclaim your voice. Fear will try to keep you silent. Guilt will try to keep you loyal. But truth will set you free. And your truth is sacred. Your truth is strength. Your truth is the foundation of every healthy relationship you will ever build. The more you honor your inner knowing, the more you will see clearly. You'll stop rationalizing emotional abuse. You'll stop defending dishonesty. You'll stop explaining away red flags because you'll understand that your peace matters more than someone else's approval. Your life is too precious to be spent apologizing for existing. You do not have to feel bad for saying no. You do not have to feel afraid for having needs. And you do not have to be loyal to people who are disloyal to your peace. You are allowed to walk away from guilt. You are allowed to walk away from fear. And you are allowed to walk toward freedom. They undermine your worth. It doesn't always begin with cruelty. Sometimes it starts with a laugh at your expense, a small comment brushed off as just a joke, a subtle look of disapproval when you speak with excitement, a sigh when you talk about your dreams, and you tell yourself, maybe I'm just being sensitive. But that's where it begins, the quiet erosion of your self-worth. These are the people who know how to dim you without raising their voice. They might praise you in public, but in private, their words are barbed. Their compliments come with conditions. Their support has a ceiling. You begin to notice that your wins are not celebrated, they're tolerated. And your failures, they are magnified. You start questioning your abilities, your intelligence, your beauty. Their words become the lens through which you view yourself. And what used to be confidence turns into self-doubt. The things that once made you proud now make you feel inadequate. This is not an accident. This is a tactic. There is a name for this kind of behavior. Erosion. Not destruction in one blow, but slow, steady wear on your soul. You won't even realize it's happening until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize yourself. Not because your face has changed, but because your spirit has. You may try harder to please them. Work to be better. Shrink yourself so they feel bigger. You silence your laughter so it doesn't seem too much. You lower your light so it doesn't threaten their shadow. You think that if you change yourself enough, maybe they'll finally respect you, but they won't. Because it was never about you, it was always about control. These people don't want you to grow. They want you to remain dependent. They want to be the loudest voice in your life, even if that voice is critical, cold, or cruel. Because if they can shape your identity, they can shape your choices. And when they shape your choices, they keep you small. But the truth is, your worth is not up for negotiation. It's not something someone else gets to define or diminish. It is rooted in your existence, not their opinion. And when someone consistently makes you feel like you're not good enough, that says more about their insecurity than your inadequacy. You do not need to stay in spaces where you are constantly trying to prove your value. You were never meant to perform for love. You were meant to be loved simply because you are. Your presence is enough. Your light is enough. You are enough. When someone truly values you, they speak life into you. They remind you of your brilliance, especially when you forget. They celebrate your wins, and they hold you through your losses. They don't compete with you, they rise with you. That's what love is meant to feel like. Uplifting, not undermining. If someone belittles your growth, mocks your goals, or questions your worth under the disguise of tough love, understand this. That is not toughness. That is toxicity. And you deserve better than living under the shadow of someone else's fear. You cannot grow in an environment that does not support your blooming. You cannot thrive in a place where you are emotionally starved. You cannot love yourself while being surrounded by voices that constantly criticize your essence. It's not selfish to walk away from someone who consistently makes you feel small. It's sacred. It's necessary. It's healing. And healing begins the moment you decide that you no longer want to be edited, you want to be embraced. Reclaiming your worth is not about arrogance, it's about alignment. It's about standing in the truth of who you are, even when others try to make you forget. Your worth does not decrease based on someone's inability to see it. You are not hard to love. You are not too much. And you are not unworthy. You are exactly what you are meant to be, and the people who see your light will never ask you to dim it. They refuse to take accountability. There is something deeply disorienting about being in the presence of someone who always escapes blame. No matter what happens, no matter how clear the evidence, somehow you end up feeling responsible. Not because you were wrong, but because they are skilled at rewriting the narrative. It begins slowly. An argument that ends with you apologizing even though they were the one who hurt you. A moment of conflict that becomes about your tone instead of their betrayal. A situation where their mistake is twisted into your overreaction. And you're left spinning, wondering how the truth got turned inside out. This is not conflict resolution, it's emotional manipulation. And people who refuse to take accountability do so not because they're unaware, but because they're unwilling to face themselves. They've made a habit out of self-preservation at the expense of your peace. They may use phrases like, "I'm sorry you feel that way," instead of, "I'm sorry I hurt you." They shift the focus from their behavior to your reaction. It's never about what they did, it's always about how you responded. And over time, you begin to question your sanity. This pattern creates emotional confusion. You start wondering if you're too sensitive, if you misunderstood, if maybe it really was your fault. That confusion is not random, it's created. It's a way to keep you stuck, doubting yourself and reliant on their version of events. You find yourself replaying conversations, trying to find where you went wrong. But the truth is, accountability was never on the table. Because taking ownership would require vulnerability. It would require honesty. It would require the kind of courage that they haven't cultivated. Accountability is not weakness, it is wisdom. And those who avoid it are not strong, they are hiding behind pride, behind fear, behind ego. And the cost of their refusal to own their actions is the erosion of trust, safety, and intimacy. In healthy relationships, apologies are bridges, not weapons. They are not demanded, but given freely. And they come with change, not just remorse. When someone truly cares about you, they don't just say, "I'm sorry," they show it. But in toxic dynamics, apologies are rare. And when they come, they are shallow. They are filled with excuses, half-truths, and justifications. And you're left holding the weight of unresolved pain while they move on like nothing happened. You begin to realize that you are not healing, you are surviving. That your peace is constantly disrupted by someone who refuses to look in the mirror. And no matter how much you explain, beg, or cry, they will not change because they do not believe they need to. It's not your job to teach someone accountability. It's not your responsibility to absorb their denial. And it's not your role to carry the weight of someone else's brokenness. You can love someone and still acknowledge that they are not emotionally safe. The bravest thing you can do is step away from the cycle. To stop dancing with someone who won't even acknowledge the music. To stop shrinking your truth to protect their image. To stop bleeding in silence while they pretend there is no wound. Your voice matters. Your pain matters. And your truth deserves a place to be heard. If someone refuses to take accountability for hurting you, that doesn't make your pain less valid. It makes their love less true. The path forward is not paved with denial. It's built on truth. And sometimes that truth is this. They will never own what they did, but you can still heal without their apology. They are consistent in chaos, inconsistent in care. There are people who leave your life in disarray not because of one single act, but because of a pattern of emotional turbulence. They are the storms that come without warning. One day they're warm and affectionate. The next they're cold and distant, and you never know which version of them will show up. This kind of unpredictability keeps you on edge. You begin to anticipate their moods before they speak. You monitor your words, afraid of triggering an explosion or withdrawal. You start living in reaction, not in presence. That is not love, that is survival. The inconsistency creates emotional addiction. You chase the good moments because they are rare. You cling to the highs, hoping they'll return. And when they do, it feels euphoric, but it's temporary. And you spend the rest of your time walking on eggshells, trying not to lose the version of them you fell for. They are inconsistent in showing up for your needs, but consistent in stirring chaos. They remember what hurts you, but not what heals you. They show up with urgency in their own crises, but disappear in yours. And when you bring it up, they deflect, deny, or dismiss your feelings. Their affection has conditions. Their kindness is a currency. And their care is a tool for control. You realize that you're being loved based on how convenient it is for them, not how deserving you are. And you start to question whether you're asking for too much, when all you want is emotional safety. You begin to confuse intensity with intimacy, passion with purpose, attention with love. But real love is consistent. It is stable. It shows up even on hard days. It doesn't disappear when it's inconvenient. It doesn't punish you with silence. It doesn't vanish without explanation. You deserve more than a relationship that feels like a roller coaster. You deserve peace, not unpredictability. You deserve someone whose love doesn't come with whiplash. Someone who doesn't keep you guessing whether you're loved today or forgotten tomorrow. When someone is consistent in chaos, they are not nurturing your soul, they are destabilizing it. And no matter how strong you are, no one thrives in a space where they are emotionally unsure. You are not meant to live in fear of someone's reaction to your existence. It's not dramatic to want consistency. It's not demanding to ask for reliability. It's human. It's necessary. It's love in its purest form: presence, reliability, and truth. And if someone can't offer that, then you must ask yourself why you're staying. The hardest thing to admit is that someone can mean a lot to you and still not be healthy for you. That someone can love you in their way, but still hurt you in yours. And that staying in chaos does not make you strong, it keeps you stuck. You are allowed to choose peace. You are allowed to walk away from inconsistency. You are allowed to say, this love is costing me too much. Because the right kind of love will not drain you, it will fill you. And in that fullness, you will remember what it means to be safe. At the end of the day, the journey to identifying toxic people isn't about judgment, it's about survival. It's about learning to protect your peace, reclaim your truth, and honor the sacredness of your soul. The moment you begin to see clearly, everything begins to shift. You stop explaining yourself to those who never wanted to understand you. You stop shrinking to fit into spaces that never welcomed your growth. You stop confusing pain for love and chaos for passion. Toxic people don't always wear warning signs. They come dressed as friends, family, lovers, mentors. They come with charming smiles and heavy baggage, but their energy speaks louder than their words. You feel it in your body, you sense it in your spirit. And if you are quiet enough, you'll hear that whisper within you say, something isn't right. Listen to that voice. It is your compass. It is your protector. To identify toxicity is to reclaim your power. It is to say, my heart is not a playground. My mind is not your battlefield. My life is not your experiment. You have every right to create boundaries. To say no more. To walk away without a dramatic goodbye. Sometimes healing isn't loud, it's silent decisions made in moments of clarity. Let no one convince you that loyalty to dysfunction is love. Let no one tell you that enduring emotional instability is strength. True love doesn't confuse you. True care doesn't harm you. True relationships don't ask you to abandon yourself to be accepted. As you move forward, may you find the courage to trust your intuition, to see patterns, not just apologies, to value peace over temporary affection, and to believe with unwavering conviction that you are worthy of love that does not hurt. The most powerful form of self-love is discernment. And once you begin to recognize who is draining you and who is pouring into you, you will no longer settle for crumbs when you were born to feast. You were not created to live in fear, guilt, or shame. You were created to shine, to rise, to be free, and freedom begins the moment you stop ignoring the red flags and start choosing yourself.